You're listening to the House Hacking Podcast, the blueprint for one of the best financial life hacks there is. House hacking. If you are looking to get ahead financially or learn about the easiest way to get started with real estate investing, then you are in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of individuals from all walks of life that use house hacking to eliminate their housing costs and accelerating their path to financial independence. Your number one place for all things house hacking.
Gabe, thank you so much for being on the show today. We bumped into each other on, I think it was Instagram earlier in the year. Then I started following your YouTube, and ever since then, I've just wanted to have you on the show to hear your story. You know, how you doing? Where are you calling in from today?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. I love talking house hacking. I'm calling in from Manchester, New Hampshire, and doing pretty good.
Cool. Well, just give everyone for listening that maybe hasn't followed you on social media or stumbled across your YouTube account. I mean, give us this high-level summary of your house hacking experience, because you're pretty young. You're 24, right?
Yes, I am.
And you're already on your second house hack. So just give us sort of a summary of that, would you?
Yeah. So let's see. When I was 21, I got my first triplex, renovated one of the units, and then moved into there and was able to live there for free. And was extremely frugal like the couple years before that. And then the couple years while I was there, just saving like absolutely everything. And then earlier this year, I stayed there for like a year and a half, something like that, maybe 2 years. And then earlier this year, we got our second triplex. And then this one was a lot bigger renovation on, and we've been running Airbnb out of here. So that's been a little interesting with the pandemic and everything. But between the two of those, since we're living so frugal, I was able to quit my job earlier this year off of pretty much strictly the rental income from those, because we're at that level of frugality. And then I'm able to focus on, whatever other stuff I'm, trying to do. It might not pay as well, like YouTube and stuff doesn't really pay enough, but it's something I'm really passionate about, talking house hacking and talking, life hacks and all that type of stuff. So, yeah.
Pretty awesome way to spend your early 20s, right? Hustle for a couple of years. Now you're like, you know what? I've got my baseline covered and I can work on passion projects. That's a pretty cool place to be in.
Yeah. I mean, we were kind of looking at like, sure, we could keep going crazy and working at a job I don't like for a couple more years, but then what's the end goal? It would be to do exactly what I'm doing right now. So I'm like, well, why don't we just do it right now and see what happens.
Awesome. So, all right, 21, what got this idea in your head of we want to house hack, want to buy a property? I mean, did you even know house hacking, what it was, or is it something that just clicked of, hey, if I go buy a triplex, I can, live for free? How did this all come about?
Well, I got my real estate license when I was 18 because I didn't like college and, I didn't like school. And I didn't want to go to college for, spend all this money on, I don't know what I would even go for. So I got my real estate license, and that kind of got me interested in real estate a little bit. But then I think it was my mom recommended Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I read that, and then that kind of led me down the rabbit hole of real estate investing. And then I didn't know what house hacking was, but I wanted to get like a duplex, triplex, something like that. Cause I'm like, oh, it seems like a good idea. And then somebody told me about, what you're doing is like house hacking. I was like, oh, okay. So then, that led down another rabbit hole of financial independence and bigger pockets and all that type of stuff. But it seemed to make so much sense once I looked into it a little bit. I was like, oh, that seems like there's no way that could fail.
Yeah. So, and it's odd though. Most of the young folks that I talk with, folks in their early 20s, they go with the roommate style of house hacking of let me just buy a big house and rent out all the extra rooms. But you sort of steered right towards that duplex, triplex, sort of small multifamily. I mean, did you ever consider just doing that big house and renting out the rooms, or did you really think of okay, I just read Rich Dad Poor Dad, this idea of buying investment property, and you went straight to this multifamily route?
Actually, we might do the big house thing. I didn't even know that was a thing at the time. And it just seemed like this one made sense. I was making money while I was living there. So it just, it made a decent amount of sense. I don't know. I never looked at it the other way. And also when I got married, the first time I stayed there was the day I got married. Like we were renovating it for like 3 or 4 months beforehand. So like I wanted to have like my own place. I didn't really want to have like this whole, sharing.
Yeah. That makes sense. All right. So at 21, how'd you qualify for a loan? Because it sounds like you didn't do school. So you just started working right away. I mean, and you had that realtor's license. Were you doing well enough as a realtor where you could qualify for a loan, or were you also doing some other work at that time?
No, I sucked as a realtor. I'm getting a little better now, but it was pretty bad at the time. So like, my dad had a commercial cleaning company, and I've been working for him since I was like 11. So I had worked my way up to like an ops manager at that point because I'd been working there for like 10 years. And that's how I was able to qualify. But they were, yeah. So
Let's get into some of the numbers then. All right. So the
sure.
triplex, you found it. This was a couple years ago, three and a half years ago. How many properties did you end up having to look at before you found this one, or how'd you end up finding this one? Was it actually on the MLS, or was this an off-market deal?
Yeah, I haven't done great with finding off-market deals so far, but this was just MLS. We were looking at everything that came on the market for like 6 months or something like that, just all the time, just looking at them, going and seeing properties and running the numbers. And at that point, like I knew the numbers so well that like when this one came on, it had gone under contract and then it came back on the market, and we saw that the day it came on, we went over and saw it, put in an offer right away. And we were able to get that. And I think we got it for 195 at the time, which was really good. And like over the past couple of years, it's probably gone up to 300,000 in value just because the markets have been so crazy recently.
Awesome. All right. So 195, you said it came back on the market. It was under contract. So was there some issues with it that is
Yeah,
why it
like
fell through?
I don't know what the issues were specifically, but the unit I moved into, there was like a smoking hoarder there. Like there was like rows where you could walk through and you couldn't get into some of the rooms, and the dude was storing stuff in his bathtub. So I don't know if he was showering at all.
Oh,
And then like he's storing stuff in his oven. It was horrible. It's like nicotine just dripping down the walls. So I think like it took a long time to clean that up, but I think that was part of why a lot of people didn't want to handle that. We
yeah.
had to like rip out the ceiling, rip out the kitchen, like tons of stuff, renovate the entire bathroom. And then the other ones needed some work, but I haven't really got to those yet. But I think it was definitely scared a couple people off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of where you can find good opportunity, right? Is
Yeah.
the problems that, 90% of folks don't want to deal with. We can come in
Mhm.
as an investor and take care of that problem. All right. So it was 195. It's a triplex. How many bedrooms and bathrooms were in each of the units? Were they all identical? And what was the makeup with them?
So it's stacked. The first unit on the first floor is a 1 bedroom. That was the one that we moved into and that we had to renovate. And then the other ones were the same square footage, but 2 bedrooms. But they're pretty small 2 bedrooms, really.
Yeah. And what type of loan did you end up using to buy the property?
FHA, love
Awesome.
that thing. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
then we also got, there's one thing I tell like everybody that I can is to take the 10,000 back towards closing costs. So you save a lot of cash out of your pocket and just throw it on the loan, and you never actually pay for it. So that's something I've done with almost every deal I've done.
Now,
Uh,
did you do the 203K loan, or did you just do the traditional FHA and they were fine closing on the property with the hoarder in there? Or did that all have to be cleaned out
he
before closing?
we actually had to push the closing like twice because it was contingent on him moving out because I had to owner occupy the property.
Yep.
And it took him a long time to clean out. And there was like a giant pile of bags in the front of his house where he'd like thrown everything out. So we ended up having to push it a couple times because it took so long to do that. But technically he was living there, so it was livable. So they were fine with it. And I didn't really I didn't have enough money, and I wasn't, I couldn't hire people to do it with like I don't know. I just wanted to do it myself and learn some stuff. So I just went that way.
Awesome. So FHA loan, you got into the property. Were those the second and third floor? Was those occupied at
They
closing?
were, yeah.
And what were you getting for rent on those two?
The top floor was at 8. We moved it to 850. So it's still way below market value, but the dude's been there for like 20 years. And he's really easy. And then the other one was at like, I think 875 or something like that. And we moved it to 920. And then the garage was renting out for $80 a month as well.
And was the garage being rented before you moved in and bought it, or is that something that you added since then?
That was it. We raised the rent a little bit, but he'd been renting it for 15 years. And then actually recently he just died and the family like didn't want the stuff. So we actually just broke in there last weekend because I'd never been in, and there's like an old BMW in there that we're going to try to figure out what to do with. But yeah, so it's a little interesting.
That's a cool little
tidbit on
find.
that. Yeah.
All right. And then what's your payment on that when you bought it for your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance and everything?
I think it's like $450. No, not $450. $1,450.
Okay. So, I mean, if you're getting 800 and then, $875 when you're moving in, I mean, they're covering your cost to live there. So you're essentially at zero.
Yeah, it was really nice because I was living with my parents beforehand because I was saving everything I could, and then I moved there and it was like living at home again because there's like no expenses. It was pretty cool.
Awesome. All right. So a couple of things there. So you mentioned the guy on the second floor, and I just want to dive into this a little bit. You said, he was at 800 and you moved him up to 850, but he's still way below market, but he's been there forever and he's easy. So to talk us through this a little bit, like how much actually could you get for rent? And then what might you actually have to put in for renovations to get it ready to be for that market rent?
So let's see. He's on the third floor, and his apartment hasn't been touched in like the 80s probably. Like we would need to redo everything there, and it's just not something that I have the time or desire to do right now. And then you could probably get it up to like 1,100 probably. Maybe 1,000, 1,100 because it's pretty small 2-bedroom, but there's still like waiting lists everywhere in Manchester right now. But it's just something that I haven't really wanted to do at this point because he's been really easy. He takes care of the place.
And for folks that are listening, I mean, there's this online, a lot of folks say push to get every single dime that you can. And I'm actually with you on this side of things. Because I mean, if you look at it, all right, if it hasn't been touched since the 80s, that's kitchen, bathroom, paint, flooring, probably going to be some electrical work, fixtures. And to hopefully get an extra $100 to $200 a month, that does add up. So now you're like $2,000, $3,000 a year in additional rent, but you might have to put in 20 or 30 grand to get it there. And it's going to be offline for a couple of months. So, I mean, when you sort of look it out, to me, I would do the same thing. Like if he's been there, he takes care of the property. Let's just keep moving him up a little bit every single year, and then not have to worry about that headache and push that off as long as possible. So I love the fact that you just sort of looked at that, because I do that analysis on things and say, is it actually worth me trying to get that extra $100, $200? And then what do I need to invest in the headache that it's going to take to get it to that market rent?
Yep.
All right. So you lived there for a year and a half. Did you end up keeping the FHA loan, or did you refinance out of it?
We refinanced out of it, like right before we got our next one. But I think it saved like $50 a month or something like that. Like it wasn't really a big difference. Yeah.
And was the purpose of refinancing it to try to get a lower rate, get rid of the mortgage insurance, or because you wanted to use the FHA loan program again?
I thought I was going to be able to use the FHA again, but it didn't end up working out. And it was also just like, it didn't cost me anything at all. And I think I got a check for like 6 cents or something like that. And then it just lowered the payment. So I'm like, why not?
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So you were there for the year and a half. What caused you guys to start looking for a second home?
I did not like the job that I was doing. So I was like, if we get 2-3 house hacks, I'm out of here and we'll do something that we like, so that was kind of always the plan, is to move. Like, you have to live at the owner occupying for at least a year. So pretty much staying somewhere for a year, start looking again. We're going to do that. We're looking again at this place that we're at now. Once, I think we got like 3 more months left, and then, maybe 1 or 2 more times and we'll call it a day. But we were already looking. So
I'll put it in the show notes for folks, but I wrote this article and sort of titled it the House Hacking Leapfrog Strategy, which is exactly what you're doing. It's get into the house hack, stay there for a bit, and then go on to the next house hack and do that 3, 4, 5 times. And now all of a sudden you end up with multiple investment properties that are producing great cash flow for you. So how long did it actually take you to find this second property? How long did you actually have to search for?
We were looking a long time with that one as well. We had the market had gone kind of crazy from where it was before. Like that one was 200,000, which was, a decent deal at the time, but it wasn't unheard of. And now there's not a triplex in the city under 300,000. So we had been looking for a while, and it ended up being my brother actually looked at it. I was on vacation in Belize, and my brother walked through the property because I'm like, hey, this one looks, pretty good. Can you go look through it? And he said, yeah, it's pretty good. So we just put in an offer there and, kind of jumped on it.
Cool. And when you moved out of your first place, what'd you get for rent for that one bedroom, that first floor that you were in?
1150, 1125, something like that.
So you're bringing in like almost $3,000 now for that property.
Yeah.
And you've got the payment 1,400 and some change, and obviously you're gonna have to set some of that aside for maintenance and capex. But I mean, you've got $1,500 in cash flow before setting some money aside for maintenance and expenses. That's a pretty cool place to be in when you're 23.
Yeah, it is. And we brought like the check we brought to closing was like 6,500. So like the ROI on this property is just like, is there a number for it? It's like infinity, You're just making insane amount on such little down. That's why, try to use as little cash as possible. So yeah, it's been pretty cool.
All right. So I want to come back to this property in a minute. And after we touch on this second one. So what'd you buy the second house hack for? And it was another triplex, correct?
Yeah. So this one's a little bit different. It was 2 4-bedrooms and a 2-bedroom. So a lot bigger. And we bought it for $350.
Awesome. And then what are each of those units renting for, and which one did you move into?
So we had to renovate 2 of the units to get them like back where they were. And then we had both of them leave before closing. And then we kept one person just because we didn't want to have the whole place empty, and they're actually really nice. We're going to keep them. But we moved into one of the 4 bedrooms. And then the other one we're renting on Airbnb right now. So the 2-bedroom one is doing about $1,000 a month. And then the one we have on Airbnb is doing about $4,000 a month. And then we're living in the other one.
Awesome. All right. So much there I want to dive into. All right. $350 took you a while to find it. What type of loan did you do, and what type of down payment? What's your mortgage payment on that?
We used a 5% down conventional loan because we weren't able to do the FHA, but it worked out pretty good as well. And then the mortgage, tax, and insurance are $2,450 on this one right now.
$2,450. So you got that 2-bedroom is bringing in a little over $1,000 a month. So now you're at $1,450. What would that 4-bedroom rent for if it wasn't on Airbnb? Is it one bath or 2 bathrooms?
We added another bathroom, which was pretty expensive because we wanted to do the Airbnb. But it would probably go for $1,800, something like that, maybe up to $2,000. Okay,
so you'd essentially, with those 2 units, then you'd be covering your cost to live there and have a little extra if you're getting that $1,800 a month on it. You're pocketing $300-400 a month.
Yep.
So when you were looking at it, did you have the idea of doing Airbnb for that? Or was your plan originally like, we're going to do these long-term rentals, and then the Airbnb idea came a bit later?
I was at the point where if we didn't do Airbnb, I would have to stay at my job. So that was kind of we were looking for something specifically with 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms because we know we could run each bedroom individually. You can't really run 4 bedrooms on 1 bath because it would just cause headaches. So we were specifically targeting, we need a triplex with at least 1 4-bedroom unit in it. So that's what we're hunting for.
Awesome. All right. So, I mean, you said you're averaging about $4,000 a month. So are you renting it on Airbnb as a flat unit? I mean, or are you renting it out by the rooms? What's roughly your per nightly rate? And I mean, how's that working out right now with COVID, and was it doing better before COVID?
Yeah. So, we're renting them individually, by the room, cause it's like double what it would be, if we weren't doing it that way. And most of them, we have 3 bedrooms on Airbnb right now. And then we ended up we have one person who's here like long-term, like 6 months or whatever, like that, renting a room. And then occasionally we do like stuff like that where one person will rent it for a couple months at a time. But on average, it's like 35 to $40 a night. It equals out to being around $1,000 a month per room.
How's the occupancy been?
Oh yeah,
with COVID.
So I quit my job and started this, and then like a month after COVID hit, and I was in the middle of renovating the whole place. I'm like, and I'm like, okay, a couple weeks, like I can get through this, and then it's turned into a year later. But it's been like 95% occupancy. It's been fine. Like it hasn't affected us really at all. We've been keeping everything really clean and doing all the safety protocols and everything. We have like put keypads everywhere so people can don't have to come in contact with other people. But it's been fine so far.
So you bought it and you put the 5% down, so you're at like 17.5. How much did you actually have to bring to the closing table between down payment, closing costs? Did you get credits from the seller, and were there rent credits as well? I mean, what was your total cash at closing that you had to come up with?
I think it was around 15. I honestly don't remember. We did have, again, the 10,000 back towards closing costs, but we, had other stuff come up. So I think it was around 15.
And then you rented both the 4-bedroom units. What'd you end up spending? You did the work, I'm assuming, mostly by yourself.
Yeah.
And then what'd you end up spending on material costs?
It took me a couple months of doing that, and I was working full time at the time as well. I think it was around 20 all in. Putting in the bathroom was like $10,000. That really sucked. The way it ended up working out, it ended up being like double the price it was originally going to be, because I was doing some of the work myself, but you had to have the electricians and the plumbers, and it was over a granite slab, so they had to like raise the whole floor. It was like this whole thing.
Oh wow.
But it ended up like not being all that crazy.
All right, so you're into it for around 35,000 between your closing cost, down payment, and what you did on renovations. And then what'd you spend actually to outfit the 4-bedroom for Airbnb, for dishes and beds and linen and all of that good stuff?
It wasn't much. It was maybe it kind of like happened over a couple months, so I'm not 100% sure, but it was probably well under $2,000, maybe 1,000 to 1,500.
So you're able to keep it pretty low budget getting that. I mean, so, just adding this up really quick. So your payment's just under 2,500, 2,450 a month. You've got that downstairs bringing in 1,000 a month. And then you've got this Airbnb that's bringing in 3,500 to $4,000 a month. So, I mean, you're doing pretty well with this thing here. I mean, you're easy $2,000 a month to 2,500 a month in cash flow from this property. Plus you've got that other property that's bringing in 1,500 before all your maintenance and CapEx and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Awesome. All right. So I want to come back to something really quick. So you said we several times, and you said, hey, first day of being married was in the apartment. So was this all your crazy idea, or was your spouse on board? How'd you get your spouse on board? Or, I mean, just talk through a little bit of that dynamic, because that's something that comes up a lot. Is it's sometimes hard to get our significant other on board. It's easy when you're young and you're single and you don't mind having a ton of roommates. Yeah. But I mean, how did that conversation go? And just share a little bit with that.
Yeah, so she's not as into all the financial stuff as I like, kind of nerd out about it, and I like the numbers and whatever, but she's been really supportive, because once I kind of like explained to her, like, hey, if we do, like we need somewhere to live anyways, obviously. So like this is probably going to be as good or better of a place than we would get if we were renting somewhere. And then if we do this for a couple of years, like I'll never, like when eventually we have kids or whatever, I'll never have to miss a soccer game, or we can do whatever we want for the rest of our lives if we just kind of, like, we're living in the hood right now. I'm not gonna lie. Like there was a shooting behind our house. It's not good. But we're looking to move again. We're gonna get something better next time. But like once you explain, like, hey, if we just do these little sacrifices, we won't have to stress about money for the rest of our lives. And I think she really understood that and has been very supportive about all that. But I I was kind of nerding out about all this stuff before we met, and then she was just kind of like, "Yeah, seems to make sense. Let's do it." And
Yeah.
it's been pretty easy.
Awesome. All right. So, one of the things I also want to touch on is, I mean, you're bringing in this extra money. It's allowing you to live, but you talk a lot on your YouTube channel about frugalism and minimalism. I mean, is there a difference between the two from your point of view? I mean, because I think most folks, when they hear being frugal, is like cheap, but when I think of minimalism, it's a very streamlined lifestyle that ends up being affordable because you're cutting out a lot of extra stuff. But you could choose to say, like, I'm going to streamline my life, but some things could be expensive and some things could be not. You know, what's the difference between those two? And I mean, like, did this help you become a better real estate investor and house hacker?
I was thinking of making a video about this recently, but it's been really hard because the ideas of, minimalism is going to be different for every person. And, for me, it's cutting down everything that I can so that I can have that money and that time to spend it on things that are really important to me. And it's kind of, asking that question about everything that you're doing in your life is like, is this going to be really important, bring a lot of value to me? And most of the time, once you start asking that question, the answer is actually no. And especially when I look at money as like, if I spend $10 on going out to eat, and that's going to be $50 in 5 years or 10 years or whatever with compound interest and the, not investing it and all that type of stuff, then you end up not spending money on a lot of things, especially when I've been so not desperate, but like I really wanted to get out of that job. So that made the choice of like, I'm going to save everything I possibly can for the next, 3 or whatever years. But we still did go on, a nice vacation, and we still did do some things, but pretty much everything out, all going out to eat, all buying excessive stuff, just pretty much had to stop until we could get out of there. Cause I knew it wasn't like well, I can retire in 10 years. I can, like leave my job in 15 years. It was like, in 3 years, I am out of here. And that'll turn into 5 years if I don't do these things. They made the choice very simple.
Awesome. So it helped get you out of your job, get you in the properties. And then obviously, I mean, there's not too many 24-year-olds, or I guess at the time, 23-year-olds that can come up with 15 grand for a down payment and another 20 grand for renovation costs. So it obviously helped get you to that second property.
Yeah. I mean, I was saving like 75% of my income. I wasn't spending on anything besides like essentials for multiple years. So yeah, that definitely helped.
So one last thing I want to come back on here is, you, especially with this first property, you got $1,500 a month in cash flow before maintenance expenses. What is your thought process on how much of that you should be setting aside? And even with this new property, you've got a lot of cash flow here. How much of it are you putting aside for short-term maintenance, and how much are you putting aside for long-term maintenance, if any at all?
Like I probably don't do things the right way. But I've never touched any of the rental income from anything. It just kind of either saves up in that account until it's ready to, have whatever I think is comfortable to have there, 5 or 10 grand. And then everything besides that goes into the next house account and just kind of moves it over there. So that's pretty much what we're doing with everything. I'm not really touching it, and just having a little bit of a buffer.
Is that buffer for you five grand, 10 grand? Is that sort of the range you and your wife feel comfortable with?
It'll probably grow once we make a little more progress here. But for right now, because I know that there are no major things coming up soon throughout the house, like the roofs are fine, the sidings are fine, all the boilers and furnaces are pretty much good. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at, like 5 in each account. And then, whatever is in the other ones. And if we need to, bring it back over, we can, because it'll be like 15 between all of them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're like there's like lean fire and like fat fire and like all those things. So like we're at the very lean side. And then like once we get one more house hack, we're going to start building up all those accounts to have a little bit more stability. But right now we're kind of like making a sprint for it.
Awesome. Makes sense to me. All right. So before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests a set of final 6 questions. Are you ready for them?
Sure.
All right. Question number 1. What's your favorite personal finance related blog, book, or podcast?
Let's see. I haven't, I kind of stopped listening to stuff and like reading stuff because for a couple of years I was really into it and I kind of burned myself out. So I think like Rich Dad Poor Dad and Set for Life have been great books. But I've read most of them, and pretty much like once you figure out all the stuff in like Set for Life, you don't need a ton more. You just need to start taking action and learning.
100%. And for folks that I feel like most folks have heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you haven't heard of Set for Life by Scott Trench, we'll put a link to it in the show notes. All right. So question 2, do you have a favorite real estate related blog, book, or podcast before you sort of shut off everything on the outside here?
I didn't really. Again, it was kind of like Bigger Pockets and stuff. There was my friend, I met him once, Mike Rosehart. He's in Canada. He was 24-year-old, retired. I went and interviewed him once, retired from real estate investing. He's doing pretty much the same thing I was doing. So he was really cool to learn from. He's still got a bunch of videos up there. He stopped doing YouTube, but he was pretty cool if you guys want to check him out.
Yeah, we'll add a link to his channel there in the show notes. All right, so question number 3, what's been your favorite travel destination so far?
I haven't traveled that much, but it would definitely be Belize. It was really cool there, and we're hoping to travel more once the world opens back up.
I know. All right, so what's next on your travel vacation list? So what are you planning anything during COVID times, and then what's sort of on the list after COVID?
Yeah, so we're going to Mexico either January or February, and that'll again depend on how restrictions are and stuff. And then hopefully sometime next year we'll start doing some Europe and stuff like that because I haven't really been overseas. So we're going to start doing some of that.
Awesome. That'll be pretty fun to do, especially when you know you've got your bases covered back home and that cash flow coming in. It makes it a little easier to spend the time traveling.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, kind of Airbnb hopping and seeing what's going on.
Cool. All right, so question number 5, what's the biggest bucket list item on your list that you have not accomplished yet?
I don't really have a bucket list, but I think it would be really cool to like travel for like 3 months and like do an extended like travel, like kind of 4-hour work week type deal, like a mini vacation. So I'm still trying to talk my wife into that because like once we get like a couple things up and running enough, one more house hack and get a little bit more passive income, we could just live anywhere in the world. Like, so I think that would be really cool to do. So.
And I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of places elsewhere in the world where it's going to be even cheaper to live than in Manchester. So you might be able to splurge a little bit on going out to eat because
that's the thing. If we rented out our apartment, we could like live somewhere crazy and like save money. So I really want to do that for at least a couple months at some point here.
The idea of slow travel, my wife and I love it. It's so cool just spending an extended period of time in a place versus like going in for like 2 days and trying to hit all the major spots. Yeah. It's a different type of travel. So yeah, I'd really recommend you do that little mini retirement and go for 3 months or so.
All right. Awesome.
All right. The 6th and final question is, what is your favorite life hack?
I mean, besides house hacking, probably be audiobooks. Like I think like looking back, I'm actually doing a video on this. It's the one thing that really changed my life was I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that led me to listening to, more real estate stuff, which led me to financial independence, which led me to starting a channel, leaving my job, getting house hacks, starting minimalism. Like all these different things came off of reading one book. So I think like taking a couple of years and just diving into Audible, like while I was working, I was just listening to book after book after book, and it completely like changed everything. So that would be
awesome. Where's the best place for folks to find you?
Gabe Bult on YouTube, BULT, or Gabe.Bult on Instagram. That's pretty much where I am.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Gabe, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast talking with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome.